Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at some very important stories. The first is in reference to what has happened recently at the PAK-AFGHAN border. Fortunately, the trade has been restored at the CHAMAN border after about a week's closure. And this is, of course, something that has happened after the incident on November 13th, in which unidentified gunmen have fired at the Pakistan officials across the border, due to which we have also witnessed the loss of one soldier's life who got martyred and injuries to two others as well. And in the aftermath of this, repeated discussions were held in terms of an emergency meeting that was also called for the people to be handed over back to Pakistani officials, which was earlier denied. And then we, of course, saw that due to some sort of misunderstandings, the clashes sort of also kept on erupting within intervals between the two security forces. After about a week's closure, we now see that because of a meeting between the two officials, we saw that the border has been restored, trade has been opened, so have the immigration offices that have opened again. And of course, a lot was at stake in terms of a large number of trucks that was also stranded at both sides. And then, of course, when we take a look at this entire situation, this also means that there is a lot of concern with regards to terrorist activities through the border. Something that was also discussed as part of this meeting. It was decided that the Afghan officials will be taking a look at this and making sure that whoever is responsible for these attacks is arrested and punished. How exactly is that going to happen? What sort of role is the Pakistani officials going to be playing with this regard is something that we would like to, of course, be taking a look at, and how moving forward Pakistan will be dealing with the issue of terrorism, again something of much concern to the country, especially since the Afghan Taliban regime and, of course, such skirmishes at the border. Our second topic is going to take a look at what has happened, unfortunately, at the No Money for Terror, a ministerial meeting which was held in New Delhi. And in this, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about how he has, of course, directed his allegations towards countries like Pakistan with regards to terrorism, which, of course, has no base, since Pakistan has made countless measures with regards to counterterrorism activities, and because of such actions has been out of the grey list of the FATF as well. However, despite that, something that we've been seeing from the Indian side previously as well and repeatedly coming in again has happened at this summit, in which Narendra Modi has spoken about countries supporting terrorism as part of their foreign policy or by blocking action against terrorists, something that was directed perhaps at Pakistan and China. And because of this, of course, we will take a look at how the international community should be responding to a country like India, who has no basis at all with regards to putting any sort of allegations or talk against counterterrorism activities against any other country, while at home, whatever is going on within the Indian territory, and then, of course, also in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, that is a cause of much international concern. This, of course, unfortunately happens without consequence, but the audacity of speaking about terrorism with regards to other countries, especially Pakistan, who's put in so much effort in this regard, is something that perhaps the world needs to take a look at. That is going to be, of course, the focus of our two segments today. We're going to be, of course, for this, talking to our two very senior analysts who are always part of the debate, and my friends Farooq Matafi and Raja Faisal. And we've also been joined for our first topic online by Brigadier Retired Mr. Saad Mohammed, who's a senior analyst, and Hassan Khan, Afghan affairs expert. But let me start with you, Farooq. Considering, of course, that the issue of terrorism has been something that Pakistan is taking a look at for quite some time and is, of course, very, very serious about. And with regards to the kind of international concerns that also exist, Pakistan has been very committed in making its efforts and making sure its case is something that is heard and understood. But then, of course, when we take a look at the issue with the Afghanistan border and the emerging threats from the other side of the border, this is, of course, something that Pakistan has to deal with. What exactly are the takeaways from the particular firing incident in terms of how Pakistan should be dealing with such issues in the future? Of course, the kind of commitment that has been shown by both sides is there, and both agree that they need to counter terrorism. But exactly how? Because this is not the first such incident that has happened.
Right. Sana, a very good question. Let me first of all condemn all such incidents. But I want to actually expand on what you said earlier regarding war on terror, the threat of terrorism, And if you have been following news reports right now, you must have seen that various political leaders, including our foreign minister, has also talked about the need for a group rethink. Then we saw Raza Rabbani Saab also, the former chairman Senate, also calling for a joint session of the parliament to mull over the issue of terrorism. Our forces, Sana, have been fighting terrorism very bravely, and they have been doing it for quite some time. For 20 years, we have actually written new chapters of bravery through our sacrifices. But it seems that since the Afghan government fell, the previous government fell, and since then a vacuum was created within Afghanistan and bordering areas of Afghanistan, in Pakistan as well. The elements that have been actually attacking Pakistan have been moving around very comfortably, and they have been attacking Pakistan as well. Then we also bound ourselves by actually agreeing in principle to the idea of negotiations that seems to have compromised our ability to actually punish all the naysayers or all the bad elements, right? So I think at this moment the best thing, because we know that there are two issues in Afghanistan. One issue is Afghanistan government's capacity, and that is a very serious issue. The second one is because the ideology is kind of simpatico with the element that might be attacking Pakistan. That also creates a problem, because then they are not taking the kind of action that is needed. So at this moment, I think the most prudent course of action would be for Pakistan and Pakistani institutions and our leaders to sit together and have a group rethink to revise or revisit the decision whether we are going to negotiate or we are going to go after the terrorist organizations. And then there's this aspect that I mentioned last time we were talking, you were here, and I said that in darkness demons come out. I was talking about economy, but terrorism is another example that keeps on flourishing whenever the national focus is not on these matters. So it is very important at this moment to double the effort and consultations to decide how to tackle this issue. I am only one man. I think our parliaments can speak better on this matter. Sana.
Absolutely, and excellent points, of course. Brigadier Saad, you're also with us, and of course, we'd like to take your input as well in terms of what Farooq was saying, for us to be able to rethink and re-strategize how we're going to be dealing with these terrorist threats. Of course, there's been so many other options on the table that perhaps have also been explored in the past. But now, with the kind of threat that has emerged, especially after the Afghanistan Taliban regime, how exactly can Pakistan re-evaluate what it's doing in terms of dealing with such incidents of terrorism?
You know, Pakistan did a commendable job bearing the terrorists from its own territory, but it has limited abilities to ensure that the terrorists who are now settled in Afghanistan and from where they carry out terrorist activities against Pakistan, as to how that's a very difficult question to answer at this point in time. One is the point is that we somehow failed to understand the Afghan mind, the Afghan policies. Now there are certain state policies that the Afghan government of various types, whether they were monarchists or whether they were communists or whether they were the Mujahideen and later on Taliban, that we cannot have relationship with Afghanistan to be cordial. That's not a possibility, because Afghanistan as a state has certain territorial claims over territories that now form part of Pakistan. They're irredentist claims, but they have these claims. So to think that, we support one faction and that faction is going to be obliged to us and they are not going to say anything to us, I think is a deeply flawed idea. Why do we interfere, we take sides in Afghanistan? That creates huge problems for Pakistan. We should deal with Afghanistan as a sovereign country, and we should not interfere or take sides within the political divisions in Afghanistan. So what we now have to do is, what has been done is done. We didn't support the Taliban by keeping them on our soil. We took the wrath of the superpower. Uh, we did pay a heavy price for that. But nonetheless, that thing has now happened. Now, what we need to do is that we need to talk to Afghanistan, and the discussion or the discourse should be political. The intelligence or the other security establishments can give their inputs, but it must be the politicians in Pakistan who must talk to the Taliban regime. And those who carry out the talks must be those people who understand Afghanistan, and not those people who have no idea how the Afghan mind works. We have a conservative regime which is basically rural in its nature. So that's the type of people that we need to send to Afghanistan, to sit with them on the floor and discuss with them as to what is their problem. And the problem seems to be that they have not, get rid of the attachments that they have had with terrorist organizations, despite the fact that they gave this undertaking at Doha when they signed it February 29th agreement with the United States, that they will not harbor terrorists on their soil, and the boundaries of Afghanistan will not be, or the area of Afghanistan will not be used by terrorists against other countries. Now it is happening. There are 3 to 4 terrorist organizations based in Afghanistan, and that's creating problems for them. But one can talk to them, and Pakistan has the necessary. I don't want to get into the details as to what are the tools available, pressure tools available for Pakistan to ensure that its territory remains safe. But those options must be exercised in case the Taliban do not.
Right, but Brigadier Saad, I'd like you to qualify that a little bit, because I want to understand the kind of options that are available. Because you mentioned earlier, of course, in terms of the fact that perhaps people who understand the mindset, people who are more relatable perhaps for the Taliban regime should be the ones who should help or facilitate the dialogue process. But we've done similar things in the past. And the kind of options that you're talking about, if you could further explain in terms of the possibilities that Pakistan has in dealing with the Taliban through dialogue. Have we not tried every aspect in terms of bringing this to a peaceful resolution in terms of dialogue and moving forward with such negotiations?
And Brigadier Sahab, we sent even religious, delegation to Kabul, and there were interactions regarding this negotiations. But even then, it seemed, and I'm talking about only a few months ago. But after that, we saw that the tension among various factions within Taliban actually exploded, and then the entire process was, derailed. Is there a solution to that as well?
There is no point in selling religious people. We don't have to send coal to Newcastle. There are already religious leaders available in Afghanistan, and the religious leaders are, more sympathetic to them than would they be to the Pakistani policies. There are other people available. I don't want to take names, but there are other people who have huge influence with the Taliban. They're not religious leaders. They must be incorporated in the future discourse with the Taliban. And I think if we do that, and we keep the bureaucratic thing a little to a side, that the bureaucrats can assist, but they should not be the ones who should be talking to the Taliban. I'm talking about by the civil military bureaucracy. It must be a political discourse. We need to get into that area to discuss with the Taliban. And if they don't listen to reason, then I don't want to discuss the options here, because that's not the appropriate time to discuss those options. They must remain within the confines of the government offices. But there will be consequences.
All right. Let me also welcome in the discussion.
The first step that we
Let
can
me also
do
welcome in the discussion Mr. Hassan Khan.
Why are we ignoring those people who were in power before that? They were not doing the things that are happening now.
Right. Let's talk a bit about that, Brigadier Saad. Let me welcome in the discussion Mr. Hassan Khan as well, who's an Afghan affairs expert. Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan, for joining us. And we're discussing the kind of options that we have when we deal with terrorist organizations or terrorists or individuals that perhaps have been given many chances in the past as well. And I understand that there has been an emphasis of moving towards dialogue. But at the end of the day, what really have we learned through the process? What still can be done in terms of engaging with such organizations and bringing them on board? And if we're talking about other options, something that has been referred to in the discussion earlier, what exactly do you think Pakistan has at stake when it comes to other options being utilized?
Hassan? Hassan Saab, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you, but I'm not hearing to Sana's voice.
So I think
Right, and Farooq,
Sana-
would you be
Sana,
so
he couldn't
kind
hear
to
you.
perhaps repeat the question for him?
Yeah. Sana की आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Sana, could you repeat the question, please?
Sana, could you repeat the question?
Right, absolutely. Hassan
Yeah.
Saab, I have asked with regards to what we're dealing with in terms of the
I think
terrorist
if Farooq repeats the
organizations. I
question,
understand
so
that there
will be
has been
fine
an
because I'm not
emphasis on
listening to
dialogue.
Sana's.
Right.
No, I think,
right, Hassan
All right,
Saab, let
Farooq,
me
I think
Sana-
we requested you to repeat the question. Go
since
ahead.
we are talking about
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's
Afghanistan, Pakistan issues, and we're talking about terrorism, could you give us the download regarding, border situations that keep on emerging and the kind of attacks that we see from other side? What are the solutions, sir?
Thank you very much, Farooq and Sana. I think at the moment it's very unfortunate that there is a total confusion, and I will say I will use the word chaos as far the PAK-AFGHAN border is concerned. Taliban are, I think, quite encouraged. They are trying to attacking cross-border. I think on the Pakistani security forces, you see in September they did that. Now the CHAMAN incident is a very recent one. Just the border is open, and I think there are reports that the Taliban security forces, they facilitated the guy who attacked the Pakistani checkpoint. And currently when we are talking, the Afghan security forces are engaged with the Pakistani border forces in Kuram at the Harlachi checkpoint. So I think this is a total confusion at the moment. Pakistan is the only window for Afghan Taliban. At the international forum, it is Pakistan which is trying its level best to convince the world to get engaged with Taliban and don't push them into isolation. But on the other side, my personal view is that Taliban, exactly on the pattern of Dr. Ashraf Ghani government, they are more responding to the social media post. They are more, I think, sensitive to the Facebook and the Twitter. So for Afghan at the moment, they need an enemy. And historically, I think when you see when the Afghan have an enemy, they are more united. If they don't have an enemy, they are not. Then they are fighting with each other. At the moment, especially the Afghan diaspora and mostly the Afghan youth in Kabul and the major cities, the easiest target is to attack Pakistan. No doubt, Pakistan may have a historical baggage, especially during the Jihad eras, during the war on terror, during the Taliban, in a way supporting the Taliban, etc. But I think past August, what you call it, when Taliban took over, I think there is a sea change in Pakistan's policy toward Afghanistan. And so far Pakistan has not accepted the Taliban regime because the Pakistan's too wanted at the moment to go with the war. However, when we see Pakistan has this problem of a confused Afghan policy, especially I'm talking of Pakistan-Afghan policy, as internationally Pakistan is supporting the international efforts in Afghanistan. But Pakistan's Afghan policy, I think there is always a confusion. At the moment, we don't know what Pakistan is.
Exactly. Hassan Saab, if we look at obviously the requirements which were made at the time of Afghan peace deal, of course, Taliban were required. One of them was that the soil of Afghanistan will never be let use for conducting any of the terrorist activities in any of the neighboring countries. So it was the case, and of course we can say that after this incident, Taliban in the meetup, of course they have regretted and they have shown their sorrow over the incident, unfortunate incident. Can we say that still they have rogue elements within them who on their own, of course, do these kind of activities, number one. And number two, we very well know that while US was in Afghanistan, of course, TTP and Taliban, they jointly fought against US, and we can consider that rogue elements within Taliban are not listening to the high-ups and they are still working with the TTP, sir?
And this incident of actually fencing, when we keep on fencing the border, and we are actually very proud that it has been done to this extent, and then the other side comes and dismantles, cut away most of many parts of it and just walk away with the material. What do you make of that?
I think what I suggest, I think Pakistan need a coherent Afghan policy. Whenever Fatabi, this is quite unfortunate. I will use the word unfortunate that whenever we are talking about Afghanistan, we get a bit emotional. Whether our political leaders are talking about Afghanistan, whether we analysts are talking about Afghanistan, whoever is talking about Afghanistan, they have that fair level of emotionalism. I will use the word emotional attached with Afghanistan. And I think Pakistan need to have a Pakistan-specific policy vis-a-vis Afghanistan. We need to deal with Afghanistan as I agree with Brigadier Saad when he said that Pakistan shall be treated as an independent country. So I think there are other countries like Iran, or other neighbors too. So for Afghanistan, we need to have a policy that it is an independent country. So instead of look at the chaos at the CHAMAN border, if somebody visit it and see that the thousands of people are crossing the border on either side. The same was previously a few years ago. The same was situation at the Torkham border. So at the moment, if you go to Ghulam Khan, at the moment you go to Angurada, or either at Kharlachi, you will find hundreds of people just roaming around the border. So I think Pakistan's need to have proper what you call it, border post or entry and exit point along the Afghan border. You may open 10 more, but it must
right,
be
absolutely. And Hassan Saab, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I hope you can hear me because we'll have to go to a short break, and
okay.
We'll come back and continue the discussion. Welcome back to the debate. Of course, we're talking about the very important issue with regards to what is happening in Pakistan related to terrorist activities, and then, of course, the PAK-AFGHAN border. Earlier, of course, we were talking about how we need to take a look at a Pakistan-centric approach, and then, of course, also in terms of following up with what needs to be done. There have been important statements coming in from political leaders, also including the foreign minister and Mr. Rabbani, who has stated the importance and the role of what Pakistan's political political leadership and perhaps its security officials can also play in this regard. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that with you, Brigadier Saab. When we take a look at this particular situation, earlier we were talking about re-evaluating what needs to be the strategy moving forward, something that has been spoken about the foreign minister as well, about how we need to perhaps take a look at our internal and external security options and challenges and decide what sort of a way forward we're going to go ahead with. And then, of course, when we take a look at the importance of the parliament, of course, this is where the decision making should be focused upon. When we take a look, unfortunately, though, at the political situation, it seems perhaps unlikely that there is going to be a sort of consensus anytime soon. But we have had people coming together for important issues. And surely terrorism is an important one right now. How hopeful are you in terms of being able for us to be able to actually go ahead and re-evaluate where we stand right now and bring in all the stakeholders to review what has been done in the past and be honest about if there is anything that needs to be changed or could have been done better?
And Brigadier Saab, if you can shed some light over, obviously Hassan Saab has talked about that focus on our western border should be equally the same as we have on the eastern border. Of course, we have to have border security force out there as well. And if you can further tell us about, should we arrange some kind of joint security teams with Afghanistan, with Taliban regime, in which of course we can have a setup in which we can share the intelligence as well?
We do have that.
First of all is that Pakistan's policy at this time, which should have been, originating in the parliament, that is not possible now because the parliament is in a state of paralysis. There is no opposition there. The opposition is outside the parliament. They're not ready to talk to each other.
So in Senate, they have their presence.
Issues in Pakistan, but what is now left to is that how to deal with the present situation in Afghanistan. Now we have to take two more factors into consideration. And that is that the bureaucracy, especially those in the intelligence in Afghanistan, are, remnants either from the communist past, when the first Mujahideen government came and then the first Taliban government came. Most of the bureaucracy, which is non-Pashtun and liberal in its approach, educated liberal in its approach, they look at Pakistan as being a problem creator in Afghanistan. And for them, we must take some of the blame because we have been taking sides in Afghanistan, political sides in Afghanistan. Our policy has been ethnocentric. We somehow think that we are the only people that need to be talked to are the Pashtuns and not the others. Now, the others are very important communities. They might not be having the strength, of the population, but they control the bureaucracy, they control the education system, they control the health system. So they are a very important part. And now, even now, I'm certain that the intelligence organizations and the bureaucracy in Kabul belongs to that of the, post 9/11 era. Now, those people consider Pakistan again a problem creator, that, Pakistan has been responsible for bringing this government into Afghanistan and imposing itself on the people of Afghanistan. So they might be working there, but they were working against Pakistan. Now, the first thing that we must need to do is stop our taking sides in the Afghan affairs. The other is that we must now carry out a substantive dialogue with Afghanistan as to how to proceed further. We must sit down with them, and this is not sustainable. Every now and then we get fire from across the border and our troops are dying and the troops who cannot hit back. If they were on a territory where we could hit back, then it's okay, then it's a fight going on. But it's an unfair fight now. There's fire from across the border. What should Pakistan do? Pakistan lacks the capacity to carry out an operation within Afghanistan, and that would not be politically also a desirable thing to do. So what we need to do is we need to talk to them as a substantive dialogue with Afghanistan as to solve this problem once and for all. And the other thing is that Afghanistan then must be clearly told, we must have options on the table as to if they don't listen to reason, and if these terrorist organizations based on the Afghan soil continue to hit us, then Pakistan must tell them the consequences of their actions. Unless
Right,
we
but
get
Brigadier
firm
Saad,
on
I
that.
don't understand how we're going to put a limit on exactly how we're going to go ahead with it. How far are you going to wait, or what exactly will be the sort of measurement where we give them this, or are we even at the point where we can actually talk like that? Because of course it's been just over a year for the Afghan Taliban regime as well, and surely they can do more. But in terms of what really exists as what has happened on ground, can Pakistan really afford to do that, and to what end? If dialogue is the only option at the end, what are we going to achieve?
And Brigadier Saad, you have rightly pointed out, of course, the intelligence setup and the bureaucracy, of course, they are post 9/11 eras. Can we say that as they, in the previous regime, they had excellent relations with our enemies on the eastern border? Of course, they must be still having them lines of contact intact. Can we say that our eastern neighbor India is still playing its role in Afghanistan, sir?
And Sana, with your permission, I have to submit very quickly, two dissenting notes. One, of course, regarding what Brigadier Saab was very kindly commenting on, the parliament, and if it is dysfunctional, I understand that the lower house might not have a presence of opposition, but the upper house does, that is the Senate. So a joint session could actually mull over these issues as well regarding internal and external. And with our friend Faisal actually focusing only on Afghanistan, I'm very humbly submitting that we are in the habit of externalizing our own problems as well. We want to keep on looking at Afghanistan, not Pakistan, and the situation that should concern us is primarily Pakistan and how and why we still are in talks with TTP. Brigadier Sahab, over to you.
Number one, we should never talk to terrorists. That's my view. Unless the terrorists, want to talk to us, then they must get into a peaceful mode. They cannot fight and talk to us at the same time. They're terrorists. They don't represent anybody in Pakistan. They're just terrorists on Afghan soil who are attacking Pakistan. So we should not talk to them. We should be talking to Afghanistan on this subject, because that's where they are present, and from there they carry out attacks on the Pakistani soil. Now, whether the parliament, you made a point on the parliament that the upper house are they ready to talk to each other? They're not ready to talk to each other. They're not ready to talk to each other on any subject because they don't recognize each other. The opposition, whether in the Senate or whether they are outside the parliament, they don't recognize the present regime. So when they don't recognize the present regime, what are they going to talk, and how can they make a joint sort of a sitting and formulate policies towards Afghanistan? So it's on the present government that they have to do this. Now, the first thing is that, as I said earlier, that one of the things is that we must open up with those people who are not in the government in Afghanistan. We must look at Afghanistan as a whole. We should not be ethnocentric. Our policies have been ethnocentric, and that has annoyed a very important segment of the Afghan population. They are against us because we somehow think that they are in collusion with India. The collusion with India is an Afghan state policy. It is not the policy of certain ethnic communities. I have never seen those people, when they talk about friendship with India, it's across the board. They look at India as their friend. So let's not look at India at all, our views of Afghanistan through the Indian prism. Let India be to one side. India will do that. We need to talk to Afghanistan because Afghanistan is responsible for its soil. India is not. India will fish in troubled waters. It's an enemy state and it's going to fish in troubled waters.
Right.
What we need to do is, deny them the
Right,
troubled
and
waters.
I understand your point, but there's some aspects that I still want to understand, and let me go to Hassan Khan Sahab since we're short on time. And Hassan Sahab, we can make this distinction, of course, in terms of engaging with terrorist organizations and then, of course, the Afghan Taliban regime, but there are perhaps blurred boundaries over here in terms of who we're engaging with and what sort of a role is going to be played by the Afghan regime currently in power, and how much of a capability or a willingness exists on the other side as well for us to actually achieve the objective through dialogue. Considering what we have seen over the past year, at least the role that they have played, can we really rely upon them as facilitators towards this issue? Because like Farooq said, this is a Pakistan problem, and we need to understand in terms of how we should be able to protect our own citizens and our territory.
Yeah, Sana, I think this is a very crucial question. So far, I think since the Taliban took over in Kabul, we were too much optimistic that they will definitely one. They promised at Doha with the international community, especially with the Americans, they will not allow any terrorist network to work from the Afghan land. To use the Afghan side against any country, including the neighbors, including Pakistan. Two, I think we were quite optimistic that now we are having a very good relation, historical, as Brigadier Saad also mentioned about our past relation with Taliban. So definitely they will pay big in a way that they will not allow the terrorists to use the Afghan side against Pakistan. But unfortunately, I think on both fronts, and what they promised in Doha, they didn't fulfill that promise. And besides, it's not only not leaving the terrorist footprint on Afghan land, and the other promises also. As for Afghanistan, Pakistan is concerned, I think they are coming up to be more hostile toward Pakistan than the previous government of Dr. Ashraf Ghani. So I think Pakistan can continue. I think this is better. Disengagement is not a policy. Pushing them into isolation is not a policy. I think to this extent, I am agree that Pakistan must keep negotiating with the Afghan Taliban or whosoever is in Kabul and push them or pressure them to not allow these terrorists to use the Afghan land against Pakistan. Two, I think Pakistan.
All right, absolutely. Right. I understand your point. Thank you very much, Hassan Khan, sir, for joining us, and Brigadier Mr. Saad Mohammed for joining us and being a part of the debate. That's all that we have from the discussion with regards to the PAK-AFGHAN border issues and, of course, the emerging terrorist threats within Pakistan. Much to be done, of course, at our own end as well. But let's quickly also take a look at our second segment, which is going to focus on what India has repeatedly done in the past and has yet done once again at a summit titled No Money for Terror that was held in New Delhi. And, of course, there were some insinuations that were made towards Pakistan in terms of its ability to counter terrorist activities, something that has been talked about by Narendra Modi, stating that perhaps some countries support terrorism as part of their foreign policy or block any sort of action against terrorists. And this, of course, is entirely baseless considering what all Pakistan has done with regards to counter-terrorism activities, and also, of course, in terms of how the international bodies have recognized that, especially the FATF, while at the same time we see India perhaps being far away from anti-terrorist activities and actually being more involved in state-sponsored terrorism, both within Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and also within Pakistan. Farooq, of course, this is an issue that we have seen emerge for quite some time now. But the important aspect, again, what the Foreign Office has called for also is for perhaps the international community to realize that and understand that. We're doing our part. We're making the commitments that we're upholding the commitments that we have made. We, of course, are working towards even more efforts towards counterterrorism. And of course, bodies like the FATF recognize that. But again, when we take a look at what India seems to say or remark at such platforms, how much of an impact does that actually have towards Pakistan? And then B, how can this be a place for a country like India to come in and talk about other countries like that?
Right, Sarah, and that is an important question regarding, our Indian peers. I keep on wondering, we keep on hearing these mixed signals coming from New Delhi. On one side, every other time we hear Narendra Modi, he actually talks about the importance of peace with neighbors as well. And then all of a sudden, somebody from India actually, starts attacking Pakistan and try to frame Pakistan. No country in the world has fought on its own turf, its own land, so vigorously and fought for the peace of the world than Pakistan. Pakistan has sacrificed a lot and the sacrifices continue. We have actually fulfilled the demands of FATF, APG and other groups as well. So at this moment it is Narendra Modi's government. I would have thought that a country as big as India would have many voices, and that's why it would be a pantomime horse where you see various quarters speaking different language. But we have seen this sudden flatness of Indian intellectual discourse. That means everything, every voice that comes from Indian government or Indian media is essentially channeling Narendra Modi's thoughts. So in that case, why is it that they keep on, blowing hot and cold? If you want to have peace, and I understand that there is a serious, or at least it is communicated as a serious desire to have peace with Pakistan, then why try to actually frame Pakistan? The best thing is to talk to each other about these concerns rather than talking at each other.
Sana.
Absolutely, and that's a valid point. And Faisal, considering, of course, that Pakistan, and you can add to that, I'm sure you'd like to, but when we take a look, of course, at such statements and the real on-ground situation, and of course, especially the unilateral decisions of 2019 and even in the past, the kind of situation that exists in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and also for Muslims and minorities within India, it's of course difficult for us to engage with such a country as well. But of course, we've always reiterated the willingness, of course, to talk with India, of course, with Kashmir being a prerequisite to the discussion. But this means that when we sit at the table, we should be able to have reason and sense. Can we expect that from India?
And never, we can never expect that. Reason being, Sana, if we look at today's India, it is being ruled by someone called Narendra Modi, BJP backed, of course RSS backed. And we should never forget that this is the very Modi who has increased the number of troops in Kashmir. Right now it is one of the most militarized zone, and state sponsored terrorism is going on in whole Kashmir right now. If we talk about, of course, Pakistan, Narendra Modi is the same man who's been exporting terror to Pakistan. Why I say this? Kulbhushan Jadhav is a living example in the hands of Pakistan, of course red-handedly caught by Pakistan's authorities. If we talk about India, of course Narendra Modi is the same man who always hailed Babri Masjid incidents, who always hailed Makki Masjid bombing incidents. And if we talk about Samjhauta Express incident, we very well know that Swami Asim Anand was hailed by BJP, was hailed by RSS. If we talk about Narendra Modi, we can never expect peace from Narendra Modi. Reason being, once he was called Butcher of Gujarat because he massacred Muslims in Gujarat. We very well know what he is capable of. Expecting peace from Modi can never be expected from Pakistan.
And Sana, since twice Samjhauta was mentioned, and of course that is a train that was being actually train incident that was mentioned, but because we keep on critiquing Narendra Modi's government, and there is this song, Indian song, Samjhauta Ghamon se kar lo, to make peace with all the sorrows in life. And this sorrow that India is taken over by Hindutva government is something that I have already made. I've made peace with the way India is going to be done. I think it is a conscious choice, and they have chosen to have Narendra Modi rule their country, and with such a majority. So my entire concern is not reforming India. My concern is Kashmir, the rights of people there, and then of course how they treat Pakistan. If repeatedly we keep on hearing voices, not only from Delhi, but from other capitals as well, that India wants to make peace with Pakistan, then show us some evidence. Start moving in that direction rather than trying to frame Pakistan. That will not work.
Over and out.
Right, absolutely, and that is absolutely important. And of course, our concerns is with Pakistan, and of course the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And we can only hope that the international community also realizes the same. Thank you very much, Farokh and Faisal, for being a part of the debate. As always, that's all that we have for now. We'll see you tomorrow.